Hi guys, long time no see. I know it's been a little bit of a break since our summer division series, but believe it or not, Corstian, we are currently 9 days away from the start of the regular season.
It's exciting.
Wow, like that is definitely exciting itself. I have a fantasy draft tonight, so um, I was spamming mock drafts because usually I like college and like high school, I used to like do mock drafts insanely early. Today
Hmm.
was like the first time I did a yesterday was the first time I did a mock draft.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, wide receivers and running backs and like the tight ends I like, they're all going earlier than I expected. And this is like a
Hmm.
weird one where by round five, I'm like, I don't like any of these players, but I guess they're better than the alternatives. So it's like
Hmm.
it's been a it's been an interesting experience. So before we go any further, I know we took a little bit of a break. How were the past 3 weeks for you?
um, think think it was good. Just nothing too much. I went to a wedding in Colorado, so that was kind of chill. Uh,
We're in Colorado.
it was Fort Collins, I think. So
Okay.
yeah, not too far from Denver. Saw the Denver Broncos Stadium, so that was kind of cool, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, a lot to get excited about. Denver is getting so much
Hmm.
of hype in general, but like, I'm sure it must have been good to see a couple of your friends from
Hmm.
Utah again,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So that was cool.
All right, yeah. I just got back from Ann Arbor, visiting a friend, and um, yeah, did a lot, visiting the city, comedy shows, kayaking, a lot of fun stuff. Um, Found out that even though I haven't touched a golf club in like a full year, that I could still hit the ball 200 yards. So that was surprising.
Hey,
I
that's
was
nice.
I was like,
Hmm.
maybe I picked the wrong sport. Instead of spending all my time on basketball, I should have
Hmm.
been paying attention to golf a little bit. So that was kind of cool. Um, this week's episode, the intent is to kind of do our position rankings. Usually we do this earlier in the month, but Corsan and I have not been able to hop on the same call to run this with multiple things going on week after week. So, um, yeah, we are covering it today, and we're going to cover multiple position groups. So it's going to be really overwhelming, but I think the style will be a little bit different rather than
Hmm.
revealing one by one. We kind
Yeah.
of formulated a list like ahead of time, so we'll kind of show you like where we stand on the quarterbacks and talk
Hmm.
through like our similarities and differences. So
Hmm.
without further ado, we'll get underway. We'll start with the quarterbacks. I think the thing that stands out with the quarterbacks is all of our guys are the same, just in different spots. So I know you mentioned that was like really funny, like jumping on before the call. So um,
Hmm.
I think for me, when I look at the top quarterbacks in particular, I think you'll notice a distinct difference between like maybe the top 6 or 7 and then the rest of the 10
Hmm.
that make up the top 10. And for me, like I think as the league has gone more and more in recent years, like 7 to 8 years now, you really want a quarterback with dynamicism, instincts, and ability to create outside the pocket. So you'll see that reflected in my rankings for the most part.
Hmm.
It's really just highlighting those guys and like the arm talent in particular. Now, there's some guys that are not on this list that I think can climb onto this list, but I'm not ready to put them on yet
Hmm.
until I see it for a full season. But I do think a majority of this is like the dynamicism with just the way the league is headed, but also the conceptual instincts are really important. How do
Hmm.
quarterbacks grow and how do they use their IQ to deliver the ball in different spots?
Yeah. Cool. Cool.
Okay. That all sound like it was the same thing on your thought process, or did you have anything different when you were looking at it?
Yeah, I mean, like at least specifically with the quarterbacks. I mean, there's obviously going to be crossover. I think with how we view these quarterbacks. Obviously these are the best. I mean, we're going to be rating these as like the best players in the league. So, I think there's so much variance between these that like a lot of times I think we can see someone be ranked like 8 or 9 and be like, oh, that's low on the list, but that's like 8 out of the 32 or number 8 on a list of 32, maybe 35 quarterbacks if you're counting, quarterback competition battles that take place. For example, like Spencer Rattler just got announced starter today over Tyler Shuck. And so, that's like that brings it to a 33-person list. Then you look at the Giants with Jackson Dart. Russell Wilson, and Jameis Winston, all quarterbacks that have potential to start this year. So, you're thinking number 8 or 9 on here feels low of objectively on this top 10 list, but these guys are all still elite in my mind. So it's like the issues that I might have with some of these guys aren't like that big of deals to me personally, because I think you could really rearrange these guys in or you could switch these guys' teams in almost any way, and I think you'll see that these guys are successful quarterbacks, regardless of which team within this top 10 category that they're in. Some of it, though, is ability to, just kind of looking to see how well they perform in regards to what the talent surrounding them is. And so, a quarterback that I think may not have as strong of a supporting cast, but puts up the same numbers as another quarterback will be obviously ranked higher just due to the fact that he has the weaker supporting cast and he's able to make more out of less. And obviously just ability to win. And then overall, just player health, I think is a key factor for me. The quarterback is the caliber of Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, or whatever, but they play 5 games a year, 6 games a year, aka Tua Tagovailoa sometimes. Sure, you have your moments where you are really good, but ultimately you're not going to be on this list because you just can't stay healthy too.
Yeah, and I mean that's super important when you're talking about playing late in December and in January and hopefully in February. So all great points. I think without delay, I'll share the list here. I'm gonna see how this works out because we're trying to change the order of things. So I'm gonna remove this banner so we can see the full list. But both of us have Josh Allen at the top. Again, the first thing that stands out is all of our quarterbacks are the same, just in different spots. So we have alignment on Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. That's pretty much it. But Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, they're all in the same area, being the top 5. But I think for me, looking at this list, I had to put Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson up top just on where they finished in the MVP voting and just how similarly skilled and the value they bring to their teams. Whereas with Patrick Mahomes, he had a little bit of a down year, and it felt like they got there in spite of him sometimes. And this is a very little downgrade compared to seasons past. So I'm not saying Patrick Mahomes got worse. I'm saying I looked at their team and looked at how they won, and it was more often than not, it was their defense and special teams and factors outside of Patrick Mahomes that kind of led him to have the numbers he had. But then when I look at Lamar and Josh, I think at times they elevated other units within their offense. And if you talk about Josh Allen, putting the ball in a spot where Dawson Kincaid had a chance to catch it, he's never put himself in a situation where they've lost because of him. And I think that kind of stands out as I look at his career, and especially last year where he could have easily won MVP as well. So I look at that in entirety, and that kind of made up my top 3. Whereas with 8 through 10, Brock Purdy, Baker Mayfield, Jared Goff, they don't win with their dynamicism as much as the top 7 on my list. But they are so conceptually sound and they get the ball out on time that it doesn't come to that, where I have to look at that and be okay, that is the function of a quarterback. They have the scheme, they have the play, and they're able to quickly process what the defense is showing pre-snap to post-snap at this stage of their career. So that's kind of how I broke it down, where it's those last in the top 10, they do that better than some of the guys above them. And a lot of the NFL quarterbacks that are starting in this league. But they don't have the dynamicism that maybe a lot of these quarterbacks below them do. So it's kind of where's that trade-off and where's that balance?
Yeah. And so similarly, I think we have the same top 5 quarterbacks, which I think are pretty interchangeable. I think these are far and away the best 5 quarterbacks in the league, where I think this is the first tier of eliteness, with me, I think it was easily, for me, it was Josh Allen number 1. That was without question. And then it was the sharp debate between Jackson and Mahomes at the number 2 and 3 spot. I think what gave me the edge with Patrick Mahomes over Lamar Jackson was I just felt the Chiefs' offense didn't have anyone near the caliber of Derrick Henry as part of the supporting cast. And it's like, how much easier does Patrick Mahomes' life become if he has a 1,500 plus yard rushing running back on that roster? Obviously, it's like Lamar Jackson was able to make the most of it, and that's why he's put up those MVP caliber stats. And Derrick Henry ran for 1,900 yards, just saying 1,500 plus in general. Yeah, but I did find our rankings, well, at least my rankings from last year, and I put Lamar Jackson 1, Patrick Mahomes number 2, and you dissed me really hard for having Patrick Mahomes below MVP Lamar Jackson. And you're like, dude, there's no way in the world you should be doing that kind of thing. It's Patrick Mahomes. He's off of 2 Super Bowls. The MVP doesn't matter. And then here you are a year later putting Lamar Jackson over Patrick Mahomes. And I'm like, okay, dude.
Yeah, such a hypocrite here, right? But I will admit that was kind of funny when I heard that. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Great receipts there. But I think the big reason for why Derrick Henry had the season he had was because of Lamar Jackson, right?
Yeah.
Because he's a guy that can go get 8-9 yards on his own, like when the play is broken down, and do that at any point in time. You got to account for him in the run game for a certain extent, and we've seen Patrick Mahomes do it at the tightest of moments. But I think this last season, where you think about what happened in the Raiders game and what happened in the Denver Broncos game, and like how the Chiefs won those games, and it should have been like, well, it shouldn't have come down to that. Like Patrick Mahomes is such a superior talent where they should be winning these handily, and I think just the dominance that Lamar Jackson carried his offense is what stood out to me, and that was like, wow, this looks different. Where it's the Raiders are just, the Ravens are just beating down on opponents once they figure it out, and the Chiefs are like squeaking to get by because they're getting everybody's best punch, and it's more like the defense. And I'm looking at that, and it's like, okay, as a quarterback, you gotta help out your defense a little bit more. And we saw in the Super Bowl, like once the Eagles D line like caved in on the O line, and they could have figured that out, that Patrick Mahomes was not able to overcome that specific set of D line. Now, is that a big deal when we're trying to discuss why I have Patrick Mahomes below Lamar Jackson for this year by 1 spot? No, not really. But I think it's important when I'm like, okay, if that happened to Lamar could at least compensate around that. Whereas with Patrick Mahomes, I felt like there was nothing he could do. And that's just kind of at that level in the top 3, I think it's just a difference in like physical ability where it's just like running with the ball. Where Patrick Mahomes can do it, but he's known for his like crazy arm angles and the way he can make something out of nothing with his arm, and he can do it with his feet. But like Lamar and Josh Allen both will just have you like jaw dropping. Like, how did they do that with their legs on top of that? And they seemingly found like a great balance with that. Now, with that said, this is not taken away from Patrick Mahomes. He's still like one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL as far as winning. And there was a reason why if he would have beat the Eagles and three-peated, I probably would have had him number 1, even with the season Josh Allen had. But I think that's enough to show like that's a weakness in this game where he has to go back to the drawing board and overcome that.
Yeah, it is really crazy though, the fact that Patrick Mahomes objectively had a very down year, I think, in a lot of people's eyes. He's still number 2 and 3 in our books. I mean, because we've seen what he is capable of. It'll be interesting to see just how Mahomes plays with a kind of revamped offense to an extent. They obviously moved off a lot of guys, a lot of moving parts, I think, within that offense. You get Pacheco coming back fully healthy. Stuff happens with the receivers. We'll see what, but like the receivers should at least be healthy going into this season. Kelsey, I guess, is objectively one of the bigger question marks, I think, here, just due to his age and his technical down year as well, even though it's like 800-900 yards, I think. But yeah, overall, I think both of our lists are good. Yeah, any thoughts on my bottom 5? I mean, with yours?
Yeah, I see a huge disparity in Jared Goff, at least, because you have him really close to top 5. I'm thinking he's more like the 10th best quarterback. And again, Not that
Mhm.
much difference in the grand scheme of things, but I think it's I considering this is a 2025-2026 season going into the season. Where do we have
Mhm.
these quarterbacks? For me, it's not necessarily about like Jared Goff is a bad quarterback. Again, he's in the top 10. Um,
Mhm.
it's more like how much of it was Ben Johnson and the surrounding skill positions around him, and
Mhm.
how much was it with Jared Goff? And I think there's a little bit of both to account for that.
Mhm.
You can say that Jared Goff got better as his career progressed,
Mhm.
and that he was helped out a lot by Ben Johnson in the skill position watches.
Mhm.
So I think to me, when I look at that and I look at like guys like Justin Herbert and Jaden Daniels who are seemingly making plays out of nothing with a less talented surrounding cast,
Mhm.
that's why I have them ahead of a Jared Goff. Um,
Mhm.
and I have to see like, okay, without Ben Johnson, can Jared Goff still put up a 45 plus, a 4,500, 5,000 yard
Mhm.
season? Because he's going to need that for Detroit to go where it needs to go. Um,
Mhm.
that's kind of the question that arises in my mind.
Mhm. Yeah. I will say, I think part of my Jared Goff ranking was just like career wise playoff success that he's had versus Justin Herbert. Objectively, hot take, I think Justin Herbert is the Dak Prescott of the AFC. Both have had
That's fair.
phenomenal yardage regular seasons. Come playoff time, both quarterbacks have had pretty much zero success, you know? And so it's like Dak Prescott's not on this list because I think he's maybe a worse version of Justin Herbert. And I mean, Justin Herbert's still number 6 for me, but like, there's that. And then with me as well, I'm like Baker Mayfield. I think the talent around him is comparable to Jared Goff. Um, but I feel like we just see more consistency with like turnovers, lack of turnovers, at least with Jared Goff. And so that's what had me put him over Baker Mayfield. Jaden Daniels, I think I could argue after another year, he probably competes for that number 5 spot with Jalen Hurts. It just, with rookies, you don't know how year 2 goes for a lot of them. And so it's like, I want to see more of the consistency with Jaden Daniels. Regardless, I still have him at my number 9 quarterback, which I think is an insane thing, for have a sophomore player. And then Brock Purdy, you mentioned you mentioned the fact of like being able to perform even when the guys around you go down. We see Brock Purdy's guys go down, and then the team. I mean, as a whole sucks. It's not all on him, but it's like, okay, well, how well would Jared Goff play if he didn't have as stacked of a team as some of these other guys? Well, we just saw a season where Brock Purdy had a team where it wasn't as stacked as some of these other guys, and I would say it was a down year for Brock Purdy, and that's what puts him at number 10. But I still have faith in Brock Purdy. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of my thought process on some of the rankings of Jared Goff to Brock Purdy.
Yeah, yeah, and I could argue that Brock Purdy has single-handedly saved San Francisco 49ers front office like
Mm-hmm.
from completely getting canned.
Well, yeah.
Because you think about like the amount of assets they blew
Mm-hmm.
in the draft, plus the Trey Lance pick, and like how that ended up. Like if Brock Purdy wasn't, if the 49ers didn't draft him, you could be looking at an entirely different coaching staff and regime right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he means a lot more than he's been given credit for because the surrounding cast is largely blinded the public. And I think you'll see, like, even with Jawan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall,
Mm-hmm.
and Brandon Ayuk kind of starting the season on injured reserve, but it looks like
Mm-hmm.
I think you'll still see Brock Purdy put up big numbers. And I think C-Mac will help with that. George Kittle will
Mm-hmm.
help with that. But I think there are things in this game that really are comparable to Jared Goff,
Mm-hmm.
Baker Mayfield, and Justin Herbert.
Mm-hmm.
So will they vary as the season goes along in those rankings? Oh, yeah, of course. Like one guy will have 3 touchdowns, the other guy will have 3 touchdowns next week. Absolutely. But
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
um, I don't want to lose sight of the things that Brock Purdy does well that I think
Mm-hmm.
sometimes are better than Jared Goff under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have questions about Jared Goff under pressure,
Mm-hmm.
particularly in that Washington game and like when he was squared up against the Matt Eberflus Bears because you don't want to be struggling with an insane pass rush like that. And with Frank Ragnow gone next season, That's probably another big question I have. But again, he's in the top 10 for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
He's been
Yeah.
phenomenal. And
Mm-hmm.
the Lions need him to continue being phenomenal in order to make up for
Yeah.
the past 2 seasons. Alrighty. So that wraps it up for the quarterbacks. When we look at the running backs, I think that's when things get very interesting. Frankly, when I was looking at your list and analyzing mine, I was really surprised you didn't have certain guys on there. But
Mm-hmm.
I kind of understood where you're coming from with that reason. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and this is going to sound a little hypocritical when comparing like my take on the quarterbacks, but I think with running backs, it's really important to be technically sound in the interior aspect of your game
Mm-hmm.
because that can keep you on the field more, and pass protection is super key as well. So some guys are thinking like, dude, this guy's a fantasy demon. How do you have him so low on your list? Again,
Mm-hmm.
top 10 list. So these are like the 10 best running backs in the NFL. But then when I look at like going into next season, where could I see them deployed and how that might change compared to the fantasy or running back outputs they've had? That's an important thing to take into consideration. So my list will be a little bit different than yours. This is the first list where we have slightly different players
Mm-hmm.
in certain situations, but I kind of wanted to get your take on like what made you what were you thinking about when you're making this list, and what kind of parameters did you have in mind?
Um. Yeah. I mean, I think a big part was just like overall running back efficiency. Just like how efficient you are, with the ball, regardless of the situation. I mean, all these guys I think are really efficient. Um, and then I mean, similar things to like, do you as a player help lead your team to significant wins? How healthy are you as a player? Are you available throughout the entirety of the season? Um, See, run blocking takes part of this. I think all these guys on this list are good run blockers. I mean, pass blockers. I mean, um, and so I mean, these are kind of overall some of the things that I looked into, or at least was thinking of when I made these rankings.
Yeah, all great points. We're aligned with Saquon Barkley at the top.
Mm-hmm.
I think after the season he had, it's only fair to give it to him. I'm still
Mm-hmm.
kicking myself for drafting Tyreek Hill over Saquon when I had the chance last year's draft.
Yeah.
It's over and done with. And yeah, I'm hoping he stays healthy for another full year because I love a full year of Saquon. Um, this is where it starts to differ because I noticed you had Christian McCaffrey all the way at number 7,
Mm-hmm.
and I have him at number 2. And I think a large basis of your reasoning is just the injury history, and I would not
Yeah.
fault you for it. But
Uh-huh.
when I think about the fantasy drafts in the first round, and I see Christian McCaffrey falling to, I have the 9th pick in some of my mock drafts. When I see him fall in the 9, or like sometimes even the second round in like an 8-man or nine
Mm-hmm.
man league, I'm like, what are people doing?
Mm-hmm.
Did they not consider the fantasy outputs he's had like year after year after year? And the fact that the 49ers have less weapons, they missed him on the ground even with the healthy Jordan Mason.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's primed for a big, big year. And it's kind of a hot take to have him over Derrick Henry after the year Derrick Henry had by one spot. But I'm looking into going into the season being like, I think he could put comparable numbers to Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry. And that's
Mm-hmm.
kind of what has me established as top 3. Derrick Henry doesn't have the pass catching upside, but like you previously mentioned, he had 1,900 yards last season. That's got
Mm-hmm.
to count for something. He's still going to cook. The
Mm-hmm.
Ravens still have a great offensive line. They still have Lamar Jackson. They still have Todd Monken. And they added DeAndre Hopkins to that great group of tight ends and wide receivers. I think he's still in for a big year. So that kind of rounds up my top 3 when I look at this.
Yeah. And I think that's a valid top 3 right there. I mean, like, you can't really go wrong with that. Yeah, I mean, Christian McCaffrey, a big part of it was just overall health. And then when he played last year, he wasn't like overly efficient. I know he was dealing with some injury stuff anyways, but like I still envision him to be a good running back. And then like another minor concern as well, just like him getting up there in age, at least in terms of running backs. He is 29 years old. Also, regardless. I mean, like half of these running backs are really old anyways too. And so a lot of times it's like these are the running backs that I see defying age to an extent. Like, I mean, I have Aaron Jones on here, who's in his 30s, I think, right now too. I think he's like 31 off the top of my head. Maybe 30, I don't know. Anyways, he's old, but like even at his age, he had incredible efficiency.
30.
Yeah, 30 years old. Okay. He still had really high efficiency when running the ball. He really didn't miss that much. I mean, he still missed time, which I think if he had stayed healthy the whole season, I could see him being maybe up to like 8-ish on this list. But like, he has stayed healthy. He's been a consistent running back. He's good at what he does, is why he's playing football till he's 30 years old as a running back. But for me, I have Jahmyr Gibbs at my number 3 spot. I think a big part of this was just the fact that you can say like, oh, well, he benefited from, David Montgomery, being there, kind of like lightning and thunder or whatever. But then I see that Montgomery gets hurt, and all of a sudden Gibbs' efficiency increases. Where it's like, I mean, obviously, I think they benefit from playing with each other a lot, but just the fact that we see him when he's basically forced more into that bell cow role, we see higher efficiency at the running back position, and it's like, oh, maybe he's only good in certain situations, and he obviously just benefits from being really efficient at those situations. But now he has to be the running back of the offense, and he still kills it that way, which led me to put him there. He had I think he had one of the highest yards per like a rushing attempt in the league or something in terms of just the volume plus how many overall touches he had too. So I have him in my number 3 spot.
Yeah, that's going to be the next thing I was going to talk about. I have Gibbs at number 9, all the way down there. Part of my reasoning is the talent, and this is the talent between 1 through 10 is not that different on my list. Like, I think these guys are probably equally as talented. Maybe Kyron might be lesser talented than all the running backs on this list, but again, that didn't stop me from putting him number 8. With Gibbs, I have concerns about Frank Ragnow not being there, Ben Johnson not being there, because I think with the center position, that impacts an entire offensive line. And I think David Montgomery might be able to better compensate around that more so than a Jahmyr Gibbs. And depending on how the line does without Ragnow in pass protection, I think there might be it's either going to lead to way more dump offs to Gibbs if Goff can adjust to it, or it's going to lead to more 3 and outs, or like throws to Sam Laporte or Amon-Ra St. Brown that probably would have gone to Gibbs. And that I think will take a hit to the pass catching. Now, I don't know how much this is to be true, but I think those are 2 things I want to see at the start of the season. And Jahmyr Gibbs can move anywhere from like 9 to like 7, 6, 5 on my list, based on that notion. Because you look at Jonathan Taylor, he's probably in a worse situation right now. And then like Kyron Williams and James Cooks, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is a better pass catcher than both, and an athletically more gifted player than both. So that's where I kind of look at it, where it's like it's not so much Gibbs, it's more about like what kind of opportunities can he capitalize on going to the season, which we don't know. The Lions could be perfectly fine. When I look at Josh Jacobs and Bijan, I see so many plays they make, regardless of the inconsistency of the rest of their offense around him, where I'm just like, wow, that's got to account for something. Like, even in the interior running game, where it's like Bijan is single-handedly carrying an offense when Kirk Cousins is on like one leg trying to recover from Achilles. He might be a player that's in for a big season if Michael Penix pans out the way that I think he will. I'm really excited about the Falcons this season. Jonathan Taylor, I think it was a kind of a risk for me putting him at number 6 because talent-wise, he's right up there with the top 3. But situation, you don't even know who's going to be a quarterback week 5 or 6. And there's just so much of drama that's gone on with the Colts, and like not having that consistency is hurting the offensive linemen in general. So he can plummet all the way to 10 based on production this year or worse. So that's kind of the mindset here. So there's room for Gibbs to move up. I think this list is a little bit fluid and kind of like set in stone list, but It's very interesting how you have him at the top 3 based on last season. I think the
Mhm.
efficiency is a big one to speak of. The next thing I
Mhm.
would ask is, what if Jameer Gibbs had played 17 full games compared to some
Mhm.
of these other backs? It's probably not going to happen with as long as Dave Montgomery's in the fold.
Mhm.
But that's something I would want to see before I vault him up into the top 3 or 4.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like Montgomery still had like almost 800 rush yards on the season, so it's like a full, it's like a full load with just Jameer Gibbs. I mean, like they'd be running him a lot because like you look at how many carries he has right over the course of the season, and he's like 50 less like overall like just running carries than like a lot of these guys besides James Cook on this list. And so it's like if we're giving him another 50 touches, like is he getting to that like 1700 rush yard mark this past season? And like if let's say we had Gibbs play the entire season as starter without David Montgomery, and he did hit that like 1800 rush yard mark, how would you have ranked him going into this season?
Top 3 or 4.
Top 3 or 4?
But I don't think you could look at it that linearly too, because again, a lot can happen over week 8, week 9, like injuries pile up with those more
Mm-hmm.
touches. And I think like how Gibbs was leveraged in his offense really played to his advantage.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing I'm looking for him is like, can he expand beyond that? He did a little bit from like year 1 to year 2. You notice
Mm-hmm.
growth, especially in year 1. But then like year 3, can he be the true do it all back? Where in like third and short situation, you're like, oh, we don't have to use Dave Montgomery. We can just give this to Gibbs.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see him used in those capacities on a more consistent basis over the course of a season
Mm-hmm.
to put him there, because a lot of these backs like Saquon, Christian, Derek, Josh Jacobs, I'd still have them in the 3rd and 2 situations. Bijan too.
Mm-hmm.
Jameer is like, I can go with David Montgomery or I can go with him. And that's no fault of Jameer Gibbs in itself, but I
Mm-hmm.
think that repetitive payload week after week after week is something you can't miss after 2, because it depends on how those 50 touches come and
Mm-hmm.
what form they come in, right? So
Yeah. Yeah, but I was pulling 50 extra touches out of 185 vacant David Montgomery carries, and so I'm like, it's not unreasonable to see that those extra 50 touches. And like we've seen him at least at Bama show that like he's been able to carry the load more or less, which is why he was drafted in the first round in the first place. I just remember you were a pretty big hater on Jameer Gibbs after he got drafted to the Lions for the first time, but
yeah, and again, situation development.
mm-hmm.
As long as you have a good development structure around the guy, then the guy has plenty of potential. Honestly,
Mm-hmm.
looking at this, like I'm not like I want all these guys to do well, right?
Well, yeah.
I think you want the same thing too.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's also important to know, like, from the talent of the players, like, there's a reason why I wasn't high on Quentin Johnson, because like talent wise, he
Mm-hmm.
was so gifted, but there's just one glaring area that he's not addressed with like the development area that the Chargers have, right? Because they kind of expect him to start right away. With
Mm-hmm.
Gibbs, you didn't really expect him to start right out the gate. He kind of sat in the doghouse for a bit his rookie season before he picked up on like, oh, this is how I have to run like on inside runs. This is how I have to
Mm-hmm.
run with leverage rather than finding the open space. And that's when you saw him start to pick up those things.
Mm-hmm.
So full credit to him for fully developing. But I would fully argue like in a different setup where you don't have Dan Campbell or like Ben Johnson as your coaches, you might
Mm-hmm.
not develop in that area as a player. Just see Justin Fields or Matt Nagy and Matt Eberflus. I'd like that's a recipe for disaster right there. So um yeah. I think the other thing that comes to mind is I know we both have Brees Hall top 10, but I have a lot of people writing off Brees Hall from what I see online. And I wouldn't do that quite yet. I know Braylon Allen exists, but Brees Hall might be a candidate for like if he's not with the Jets in the future,
Mm-hmm.
he's a buy low to whatever team he goes to next, because he's still a talented guy out of Iowa State and fully capable of carrying an offense. This is more just about situation. So
Mm-hmm.
he could have a down year this year, but the talents and the line is all there for him to have a great season with it
Yeah.
just gets there.
Yeah, I'm excited for Brees. I'm really high on him. I know, at least in terms of fantasy or whatever, he's kind of he's fallen a little bit. which makes sense just kind of looking at the team and everything alongside that. But he's a player I'm really high on. Yeah, another little receipts moment as well as I remember I had Kyron Williams in my top 10 last year, and you trashed me pretty hard for including him on this top 10 list last season, and it's just gratifying to see him at number 8 on your list going into this year.
Hey, I admit where I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And that's full credit to the players. Again, Kyron Williams year after year after year. The first I thought it was who was it? Like Sean Evans or like that guy who was gonna take over him, and then I thought it was Blake Corum, like last season, maybe this season, and he's continuing to prove me wrong. And great, like he's done it. There's nothing to say. I have to eat my words with that. So I'm willing to admit it when it happens.
Yeah, I've just been a super big Kyron Williams truther for quite a while now, and so it's nice to see some. Even though apparently the fantasy community, at least dynasty community, is still has always been super down on him. Even though he produces year after year, he has like really good efficiency. He's putting like almost 5 to carry on his touches, and like why does everybody hate him so much? And everybody wanting like can't wait for Kyron Williams to get thrown to the side and whatever running back to get us over. And I'm like, I mean, yeah, these guys do. That's awesome. But everybody hates Kyron Williams, so I'm happy that you have him in 10 this year. But maybe
I also thought he'd run out Cam Akers out of town. Sorry, what's that?
Akers isn't even on the team now.
Yeah, because of Kyron Williams. So that's because sort of incredible.
Akers just yeah.
And for the record, Aaron Jones would be 11 on this list for me. So there's like I think you're cutting teeth with this when you're looking at Breece Hall, Aaron Jones, like like Alvin Kamara is not on this list largely because of situation. Like Alvin Kamara would otherwise be on like the same realm as these guys, but
yeah.
You know what made me super?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was gonna move on to the wide receiver.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I was saying I think the league is, I think, in my opinion, is almost deeper at good running backs than they are at like good quarterbacks, which I think is kind of crazy. I mean, like I guess that makes sense, but like because I have my top 32 quarterbacks and running backs, at least the start my personal who I think might be starting going into the season here. And like because I mean like I have James Cook at what is this 18 I think, which feels really low, but I'm like that's like it's not bad because I mean have like he's smashed between Devon Achane and Chase Brown, and it's like it's crazy to think how overall stacked the league is in terms of running backs because I also put like the rookie running backs lower on the list just for the fact that they're rookies on my personal list, but I'm like these guys I still think are going to be good. Like I have like RJ Harvey, I have him at like my number 30 spot, and that's just like or 29, something like that. He's like around Ashton Genty. I have him at like 2021-ish, which I'm like, I envision that he pretty easily beats out being the 20th best running back in the league. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he's a top 10 guy going into next season, but obviously as a rookie, you never really know. For all we know, it could be a situation where preseason darling, obviously phenomenal in college, but then the regular season hits and he sucks. But I don't envision really that happening, but I have him at 20 here. Omarion Hampton, I have like the 25-ish range. Trayvon Henderson is right by RJ Harvey, so, you know.
I mean, as long as you don't and don't be that guy that drafts Ashton Genty in the first round of fantasy drafts.
And I'm not keep doing that because I want better value at other spots.
Like when you have Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, and Jonathan Taylor literally in the next round, you don't need to do that, man. Like just go on, get your Malik Neighbors, and just keep moving. So, yeah. With that, like I think you're a James Cook hater because at some points he might have been the best skill position player on the Bills, and this is coming from a Dalton Kincaid truther. But on the other hand, like you're not wrong. You're not wrong. When I look at like a lot of the like we were just talking about three of the backs in the NFC North in high regard. Dave Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Aaron Jones, and they're all great backs. Then you're looking at Josh Jacobs as well. And then you're looking at, where does Bucky Irving rank on this list? Because he looks like he's taking over the Buccaneers. But then Kenneth Walker, another guy, like if he can play a full season, like the way Kubiak's talking about him, like you can't avoid that. So it's like there's a lot of guys that you can't that you have to leave off when you do a top 10 discussion. And I love that Saquon has got the contract that he did after the season he had. That just means a lot.
Yeah, but like, and even though I have James Cook on like low on my list here, I numbered it. So yeah, he's number 16. He's right in the middle of the pack, I guess. Like, I mean, he got extended for a reason. He is in fact a good running back. Just personally, there's some of the ability and play like aspects of these other running backs that I think are maybe slightly better, but it's like I think it's very interchangeable from like 9 to like 19-ish almost in my head. Because what my 9 to 19 is Breece Hall, Kyron Williams, Aaron Jones, Bucky Irving, Kenneth Walker, James Conner, Chuba Hubbard, Devon Achane, James Cook, Chase Brown, and Alvin Kamara. Like
Joe Mixon is steaming right now.
Well, he's not listed as the starter, so what? It's like Nick Chubb is the guy on that list right here.
Hey, are you trying to insinuate some Nick Chubb slander?
He's not the bottom.
Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, that's gonna be an interesting situation, and don't be surprised if Nick Chubb. I'm not gonna say leads the league in rushing for the first 4 weeks. I'm gonna say if he's top 6 and in rushing after 4 weeks, I would not be surprised. That Joe Mixon injury is not looking great, and I'm hoping he recovers like well in time, so it's not at risk of getting re-injured. But I'm kind of glad I held on to Nick Chubb. I would monitor him, especially in redraft. Perfect round 12 pick.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's go to the wide receivers because I know we spent a lot of time on the running backs. This one is a very interesting list because I feel very similarly to what you do about the running backs with the wide receivers. I feel like as far as like the top 30, you can order them however you want to. But I think the thing that stands out to me is like definitely speed for your routes. That's something I'm really emphasizing at the top of my list. But also the physicality and the catch point. How do you attack to the catch point? And I think all of these guys show physicality in their own ways and can be primary options. You'll see a list where you have 2 players on the same team, but it's not what you think. And I think they're just that talented, and they're in for a huge season this year, provided the quarterback is healthy. But kind of what went in my mind is like, can you win one-on-one routes with a number 1 quarterback on your back with rhythm, with timing, with change of pace in your routes? I think the top 3 do an excellent job with doing all those aspects. So this one was more of just like a physical ability technician, whereas like some of my other rankings were like situation based. I think wide receiver is one of those positions where you can kind of evaluate it regardless of the situation. Although it's important to keep the situation in mind.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like, I don't know, like you said, I feel like the top 30, maybe top 20 wide receivers, more or less, I don't think you can really go wrong with how you order a lot of these guys. Like, I think a lot of my rankings just have to do with just what happens to be the situation that they're in, and like how they've done in the past, and how I feel like that may lead to how they play in the future. But it's like, I don't know, like 1,000 yards on one team feels more impactful than like maybe 1,000 yards on a different team. I'm like, I don't know, like off the top of my head, I feel like, well, like Zay Flowers, his near like whatever, I forget how many. I think he was like 900-ish yards this season. Feels like a lot less impactful than like the around 1,000 yards that Jacoby Myers had for the Raiders last season. You know, just like overall impact wise for the team. And so like it's tricky because I think you could switch those two players and like switch their teams or whatever, and then they put up the same exact stats. And I think it's like, well, I think Zay Flowers had a more impactful 900 yards for the Raiders than the 1,000-yard season Jacoby Myers that I had for the Baltimore Ravens, you know? And so like it is tricky. I feel like to rank this. What's actually crazy is I have a roughly top 100 list ranking.
Oh, shit.
Oh,
Sorry, my bad. I didn't mean to remove you.
yeah, I made like roughly a top 100 list of receivers in the league just because I'm like, these for like, at least with quarterbacks, running backs, and tight ends, it's more or less you have your main guy, and then a couple of these teams have a really good backup. Like the Ravens, they have Isaiah Likely at the backup, tight end position, where I think he's maybe better than a couple tight ends that are starting. You have like David Montgomery on the Lions, obviously, who I think is a phenomenal guy. But like I didn't put these guys in because it's like, well, most teams it's just the starter is kind of the focal point. But then with wide receivers, I feel like there's like a lot of wide receivers too, like wide receiver twos, a couple wide receiver threes that I think are elite because like I think last season, I mean, obviously this is just our top 10s here, but when I was thinking of this list, I'm like, well, last year going into it, right? We look at the Bears, where you're like, you got DJ Moore, Romeo Dunze, and Keenan Allen, and you're like, would you like if Keenan Allen was gonna play phenomenally, would you still like think about keeping the potential wide receiver 3 in Keenan Allen off your wide receiver ranking list, And so I feel like it's kind of interesting to see how deep wide receivers go, obviously, but yeah.
And it's just year after year. There's just so many talented guys. Like look at your top 10. Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas. You already put them in the top 10 after one season. That kind of speaks to the talent level like that you see coming out of college. And like even like when you see Ted McMillan go top 10, like that's not by accident. That's like great. Did he go top 10 or top 15?
Ted McMillan, I think he was top 10 because he was to the Panthers, right?
And 8, right?
I think so.
I want to fact check myself, so I'm not giving the people. Number 8. I knew it. Okay. All right.
Yes, sir.
Cool. So, yeah, going into these rankings, like, once again, love it. You got Jamar at the top. Love to see that. Gonna keep the receipts while I have them.
Yeah.
But you have Jamar at top, Justin Jefferson underneath. This is when we start to deviate, where you have AJ Brown 7th. Don't fault you for it. I have him at 3. And I'm not going to fault the situation in this regard because there's nothing I saw out of AJ Brown that's told me that the ability is diminished or that he suddenly can't do things that Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase can't. I just think Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson have higher upside. And compared to some of these options, like AJ Brown can do a lot more than CD and Amon-Ra St. Brown, in my opinion, with the way he plays with his physicality and like how well you can deploy. And it seemed like he's like uncoverable because of his physicality, whereas like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase are uncoverable because of their skill on top of their athletic ability. So when I look at that, that kind of sets the differentiator for me. But that's kind of like my top 3, whereas you have CD in the top 3 spot. Again, I'm at 4. Don't have any qualms there. Really, I think my one disagreement with your list is probably Puka, where is that? And Brian Thomas, like being at 9. And this is not a gripe against Brian Thomas. I just think there's other receivers better right now at this point in their career. And then Puka, I think he's winning in spite of, or sorry, not in spite of, like because of the situation he's in. Now he's gotten a lot better since he started and he's put up phenomenal numbers too, which is why I have him in the top 10. But I don't know if I would put him above like an AJ Brown or Nico Collins or even a Malik Neighbors ability wise. And I could just be flat out wrong with Puka just as I was with Kyron Williams, but skill wise, I think there's a lot more guys out there who have better skills than he does, including Devontae Adams on his own team. But again, just a personal opinion.
Yeah.
Puka, don't kill me.
Yeah, I think for this with like my AJ Brown ranking, it was like like average. I don't know. It was like somewhat of like the average depth of target, and it was like a lot higher in terms like significantly higher than I think almost everybody on this side. Maybe I looked at the wrong stat, but it was along the lines of like I mean that's why he's still number 7 in my books is just the fact that you throw it up to him and he comes down with it kind of situation. But it was like he was utilized predominantly as just kind of a deep threat for the team more than like a chain mover, which I think I mean I look at the guys that I have ahead of him, obviously I think are phenomenal deep threats as well, but also are incredibly efficient chain movers. And we just saw more of that out of these other guys over AJ Brown last season. Obviously, the situation wasn't perfect for a pass-heavy offense with AJ Brown last season as well, with like Jalen Hurts not being healthy the entire season.
They didn't need a pass-heavy offense even with that too.
You know, I mean, and he still threw for like 2,800 yards plus the backup quarterbacks. You know, you're still at around a 3,000 pass yard season. But it's like that plus, I mean, like Saquon doing Saquon things. The offense was designed to get Saquon to 2,000 rush yards after a certain point last season where they're like, maybe let's balance the offense. And then they saw how good Saquon was doing. They're like, maybe we could get him to 2K. And it seemed like the offense completely redirected its efforts to make sure Saquon hit 2,000 rush yards. But like, needless to say, it's like I don't like these top 10 receivers. Honestly, like I look at my list here, and I'm like the top 15 to 16 receivers. I don't really see that much disparity between in terms of like how good they are. Like I think the top 15 receivers can really, you could like put all their names in a hat, and each team that loses the receiver just pulls the name out of a hat. And a lot of this production doesn't change a lot. And like, and I don't know, I think like Puka Nacua, as long as the hospital balls aren't thrown his way, I think has shown that like he pretty much can do everything that Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson can do as a receiver. And it's literally like, if my hot take as well is if Puka Nacua was taken as a first round pick, and you know had the same exact production as he was doing, people would be like, is he better than Jefferson? Would be a potential discussion. I think people, if he was taken as a top 10 pick, like it's the fact that he was taken in the 5th round, and I think it's the same. I think Nico Collins falls victim to this as well. Whereas like obviously like Nico Collins is a baller. You have him at number 9 and you have Puka at number 10, right? But it's like I feel like a lot of people discount what those two receivers have done simply because they weren't a first round wide receiver. I mean, you look at the rest of my list here, right? And it's like, what you have first round pick. Amon-Ra St. Brown isn't a first round pick. Puka not. Nico Collins not. AJ Brown was a 2nd round pick. And then you have Neighbors first, Brian Thomas first, Mike Evans first. On your list, it's, I mean, like Tyreek Hill, Adams, Collins. I mean, like a lot of this list is just a bunch of first round, highly touted talent, you know? And like, because like these guys had hype going in, like if Marvin Harrison Jr. had the same exact rookie season as Puka Nacua had, the same year Puka Nacua was in existence, I think people would have Marvin Harrison Jr. a solid 10 spots higher than Nacua, and Nacua would be off of people's lists.
I can't speak for everybody. I think for me, I do think the Nacua take is bold because I think from a football aspect, Chase and Jefferson win in ways that Puka doesn't. Simply don't. Like Chase wins with a speed that you don't see out of Nacua. Nacua has a little bit more physicality than Chase. Chase doesn't need that with his skill ability. So that's just the differences between athletic attributes. With like Jefferson in particular, he just has like insane like wide catch radius ability along with the route running. And I don't know if Nacua's there yet. Now, having Devontae Adams on the team after having Kupp on the team, I think certainly helps with that regard. But I do think there's areas in Nacua's game where he could grow. As far as like the 5th and the 4th round picks that you mentioned, I do think there's credence to that, and it's due to a lack of like scouting in the community or like what people actually look for in receivers, where they just look at it like, oh, look at Alabama University. They're just pumping out wide receivers, and as long as you get one from Alabama, like you're good. But I do have them lower than Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill because I think, one, going into the season with fresh starts, I think they'll be much, much better than what last season's indicated. Devontae Adams in particular, I think, can win in ways Puka Nacua couldn't. Cooper Kupp couldn't for Matthew Stafford. Whereas like with timing routes, and you'll see a very Calvin Johnson-like effect to Matthew Stafford, provided he stays healthy. And that's kind of why I have him over Nacua, because I think Devontae Adams is experienced, and the fact that his route running hasn't gone away, despite some of the limiting factors that he can't be as physical as Nacua, and he doesn't have the speed that some of the top 3 guys do. The fact that he's still winning in ways, I have to give credit for that. And like for Tyreek Hill, I think there was a lot of like situations outside the football field that played a role into like why he couldn't put up the stats he did. And there's some antics he could clean up for sure, but I think he's motivated to have a better season than he had last year. And this is me taking into account that he will do that. As far as with Neighbors, I think it's like the next coming of Justin Jefferson. I think it came up a little bit. I think he's the next coming of Jefferson, Chase, AJ Brown on the Titans. Like, I think he's that talented. Again, first round pick, I know, but I think based on what I've seen last season, how he was very like personnel agnostic, he's the one receiver where I'm comfortable taking the first round in fantasy drafts because I know what I'm getting out of him, provided he stays healthy. With Collins in particular, I think I maybe could have ranked him a little bit higher. There's a lot in the Texans situation that I just kind of just made me look at it, but this is ugly. And I'm just going to downgrade everybody because I know CJ Stroud's a better talent than this. I know Nico Collins is a better talent than this. But like we're not seeing that because their offensive line was so horrendous last year. And I don't know how much better he'll get this year. So yeah, my ranking of Collins and Nacua, I don't like it because there's no perfect place to put them. And there's some credence that you have to some of where you rank them. But at the same time, I don't know if 5 and 6 are the right placement for those players in particular. Particularly because you mentioned like top 15, you could probably mix and match everybody everywhere.
Yeah, I will say Nacua had more yards per game last season than he did his rookie season as well.
Yeah,
it was only a couple yards, but so again, if hospital balls aren't thrown his way, because I think that is probably his weakness, is that he tries to catch literally everything. He plays like George Kittle in some capacity where he'll go for every single ball, which I think is a trait in some capacity that I really do like, because I don't know, because you're like, that if you throw it his way, he will do everything in his power to try to come down with that football, which does inevitably lead to some injuries, but it's like, he was an all-pro his rookie year for a reason, and and then the fact that he plays despite the injury, like outside of like the injury, just the games that he played, he was in fact getting more yards a game by like 3 more yards. So it's like you're looking at a potential. Obviously we don't know how everything pans out because Matt Stafford and yada yada yada. Because obviously him playing the way he does led to some of that injury, but like, if you look at it forward, it's like a 1,500-yard season. It's like what we looked at last season with Justin Jefferson, where he was hurt most of the previous season, and we still ranked him really highly, just because we've seen what he does. He had 1,000 yards on 10 games or something. And we're like, well, if you extend that out, you're looking at like a 1,700-yard season from Justin Jefferson. Similarly, I'm like Puka Nacua, 11 games, 1,000 yards. You're looking at a pretty baller season again from him in year 2. Don't know what would cause him to like do worse than what he's doing, because like I don't see, barring injury with Puka Nacua. Sorry, I'm a big Nacua truther here, but like barring injury, I don't see him getting less than like 1,300 receiving yards. And I'm like, a 1,300 plus yard receiver, I think is a valid top 5 receiver in the league in my head.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like I could easily see Tyreek, Amon-Ra, CD, AJ. Like they could all hit 1,300 yards like any given year, you know. So that's the other thing too. And
Yeah, I just feel
I
like we've
do
seen. Yeah,
I
we
do
have.
understand what you're saying. I do
Uh,
understand what you're saying with like comparing Nakua to Justin Jefferson stat wise going
mhm.
to this career. I I guess I want to see it like his development from like a technique standpoint. Because if
Mhm.
you can improve on that, I'm all aboard the train you're riding with Nakua.
Yeah,
100%.
but
But
I mean, like,
until I see that happen, like there's a reason they got Devontae Adams on their team besides that he's a really good player. And you
I
want
mean,
to stack as many really good players on your team as possible, right?
yeah.
There's something where it's like, why can't they just say this is Nakua's team and we're fine with our wide receiver room because they have him?
I mean, you
And
could
maybe that's an
argue.
unfair comparison.
I mean,
Yeah,
you could
I don't know.
argue why are the Bengals signing T. Higgins to one of the top biggest contracts of receivers in the league when you have just Jamar Chase? Isn't this Jamar Chase's team? I mean, like you could argue this
Good.
against a wall. Why are you re-signing Chris Godwin to a deal when you have Mike Evans here? Why are you drafting Travis Hunter when Brian Thomas did so well? Why do you get Devontae? Why do you have Devontae Smith and AJ Brown on a team together? Why would you bring in Stephon Diggs when Nico Collins was on the team? Why would you bring in Nakua when Cooper Kupp was on the team? Why draft Jameson Williams when Amon-Ra St. Brown is already a superstar? Why are you trading for George Pickens when you already have CeeDee Lamb? Like, why are you spending a first-round draft pick on Jordan Addison when you already have Justin Jefferson on the team? There's obviously something about these guys that you don't like, obviously, besides improving the team, that there's something, an issue with their game that you want to bring in another guy for. You know, it's like every team has two good
Yeah.
receivers. You know, I feel like that's not a great argument necessarily to have for ranking a guy. I mean, obviously these are top 10 guys, but it's like I feel like that's a kind of a
We
that's a
have them
cop out
5 spots
answer.
apart.
But I feel like that's kind of a cop out answer in terms of like they don't trust him enough, so they brought in another star. But I'm like, I feel like every team's gonna bring in another star if they're competing, you know?
As soon as I
Like
said it, I was like, I don't know. It seems like I don't know if I believe what I just said. But again, these are just semantics with like where Nakua has to grow in his game.
mhm,
For me to move him from like 10 to like 6, 7, 5.
mhm,
But at the same time, it's like I look at it where like Cooper Kupp was like hurt like a portion of last year, right? And then
mhm,
at one point you had Tutu Atwell, DeMarcus Cousins, and DeMarcus Robinson, and Puka like on the team at one point. It's like why can't you just stick with that team, knowing that defense you're fully ready to let go of like Aaron Donald and rebuild from that standpoint? Um, why sign Adams now? And it could be a moot point. There could be nothing else to that. Just like we want to get our team better. Like we want to make things easier for Matt Stafford and Nakua, and it
mhm.
could be that. But part of me wonders if, like, I don't know, what kind of season Malik Neighbors would have if the Giants like actually knew what they were doing at wide receiver
Mhm.
and had another talent around him. So
Yeah.
I think the same goes both ways in
Mhm.
in that respect. But um, you can look at a guy like AJ Brown. He was like elite on the Titans, elite on the Eagles, regardless of what happens. And that could be a
Mhm.
big argument for why I have him number 3. But again, I could be totally hard on Nakua and he could improve on everything that I'm complaining
Mhm.
about right now. And I'll move him 6 and shut my mouth,
Mhm.
just like I did with Kyrie
Yeah.
Williams. So we'll see.
Mhm. Yeah. And obviously, I mean, you still have him at number 10, so like you still consider him one of the best in the league. It just
Right.
I think that argument was kind of a stupid one that you brought up. And
Yeah, it
obviously
was a dumb one.
you caught it yourself too. And I'm like, dude, you cannot be for real right now. But also, I mean, like bringing in Devontae Adams, it's like Matt Stafford, if he does not retire by the end of the season, I will be so surprised. And so realistically, like this season, I feel feels like the end of their potential Super Bowl window. I mean, like if Matt Stafford is feeling great going to next season, maybe they have another year. But like Matt Stafford is for sure on his last legs. this year or next year at quarterback. And so obviously I think, you're trying to do everything you can to like make the job as easy for him as you possibly can to get you guys to the playoffs, and hopefully you have, a unicorn playoff run and get your guys to the Super Bowl, because Stafford really is like so close to being done. He literally misses all of like the off season and preseason with the back strain. So it's like he's close to being beyond cooked, I think, which is a shame because I'm a huge Stafford fan too.
I honestly, I think he's cooked already, and it's amazing that he's even like playing like this. But yeah, that wraps up our stupid discussion on wide receivers. So
Yeah.
okay, last position group. I know this episode's running long, but tight ends. I feel really satisfied with this group. I feel like this is my strongest group whenever I'm projecting like really good tight ends of the future, and like looking at guys that have ascended to the top of the rankings. I'm like, at one point I drafted these guys in the 12th and the 13th rounds of redraft consecutive years, and I feel amazing about it. So it's just good to see like how much they've grown over the course of the year, and how this position group went from like, if you don't have Travis Kelce, you're screwed, to like look at the depth of talent with this group now. I'm really excited. What comes to mind when you were trying to rank these guys?
Do these guys make their team better? I guess I don't know. These like tight end is a tricky position, like because there's a lot of like I feel like okay tight ends who are like who can put up decent numbers. Off the top of my head, I'm like a guy that I was questioning. Right, it was like, is he a top 10 for me? Was Cade Otton, right? Like because like the weeks that Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were both out, right? And like Cade Otton, he had like a stretch of like 4 weeks where he, at least fantasy wise, he put up like tight end like top 3 numbers for like a 4 or 5 week span while the two main guys were out. And you're like, he kind of can ball out, but then it's like obviously he's gonna be he's a good enough tight end that you can feed him targets and he'll like make plays or whatever. But like, is he so good that like he properly elevates the team when everybody's healthy, or is it just like a matter of the situation with him? And so it's like, I think a lot of middle of the pack tight ends could go right into that Cade Otton situation and do pretty much the identical thing. So it's like he, in my opinion, he's a good tight end, but he doesn't deliberately make the team that much better when, like he's in the full length of a season, where the rest of the season, he's kind of like, I mean, it makes sense why he's the third option behind Evans and Chris Godwin, but it's like, even at that spot, he wasn't putting up the craziest of numbers. And so it's that type of situation where like a lot of these guys on my list here, like regardless of who's on the field, like they're going to be someone you need to watch out for and scheme for, because it's not going to just be some random 4-week stretch of the season where they happen to be the best tight end in football for absolutely no reason, and then then a playmaker comes back from injury, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, we don't need you to play football anymore, and you're like, okay.
Great points. I think the big thing too is obviously you want run and pass blocking tight ends. I think for me it's like the more versatile. Like tight ends probably one of the hardest positions to play in the NFL because you're asked to be an offensive lineman and a receiver and like a special teams ace, and like support the team wherever you need, like cross functionally. And I think it's a very difficult position to kind of learn all those aspects. So sometimes it takes multiple years, like 2-3 years, for these tight ends to really hit the ground running. Whereas like the running backs or wide receivers, you can make your impact as a rookie. So for me, it's like, okay, how versatile and how great are these guys like in the passing game as weapons, given the amount of talent we have now, and how they're utilized. That kind of drove my rankings. Some rankings have no reason to it other than wish casting and hope. I think you'll notice in some of my lists. I'm still holding on hope for some of these guys because the talent level is right up there with like the other guys on the list. So similar to wide receivers, that's what I was kind of looking at there. So without further ado, here's the list. Brock Bowers, great dynasty get for me and 12th round investment last year. followed by Trey McBride, same situation. I am personally not off the Kelsey bandwagon because his down year where he looked trash was an 800, 900-yard season. And I
Mm-hmm.
think with Xavier Worthy, I'm projecting to take a step up. Rasheed Rice is going to come back at some point this season. And with better supporting cast around Patrick Mahomes, you saw the offensive tackle Josh Simmons, like everybody's raving about him from this preseason. I think he's due for a bounce back season, especially after the Eagles loss. Um,
Mm-hmm.
then you see me with George Kittle, Sam Laporta, and then a couple of tight ends who you probably think have no business being there with Dalton Kincaid and Kyle Pitts. But I'm holding out hope that they're still going to be impactful members of their team as primary or secondary options.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, like, more or less, I can see the reasoning behind, like, your list. I think Dalton Kincaid just barely missed my list. I think he was, like, he was tight end 13 on my list. Initially, when I was first making my list of guys, I think I did have him around, like, 9 or 10-ish, similar to you. It was just kind of the fact that he had the down year. Not to say, like, I'm like in fantasy and actually a lot of mock drafts and other like random leagues that I do. I'm like, Dalton Kincaid, I think, is an underrated pickup that I think you can get really far back in drafts just because he's not listed as one of the, exciting tight ends to grab. But I think we forget his rookie season where he did in fact ball out, quite a bit. But yeah, I think it's just like these guys, at least on my list right here, are just a little bit better. Maybe we see a little bit more consistency from Kyle Pitts. According to Falcons fans, he's just not that good at running routes anymore, like due to like just injuries that he's had throughout his career as well. And so I think that more than just like, oh, like haha, Kyle Pitts joke or whatever, it's like it's more about, it's like, from what I hear from fans that are watching the games week to week, it seems like he's trying to play good football. Obviously, he's obviously the starting tight end for this team as well. A lot of it just happens to be that people are worried about his ability to make cuts as a receiver tight end. And so it's like, sure, like undoubtedly straight line speed, he probably is the fastest tight end in the league, but it's just like, can he get back to making cuts to where he was, his rookie season, even his year 2 season? Because honestly, I don't think his year 2 was too bad, right? Like Kyle Pitts. Sorry, I'm looking up his stats now.
Yeah, I'm looking as well.
So year 2 was technically down, but he did get hurt.
Year 1 was really good. Like he was
it's year 1 was the big year for him, and it's like I don't know, like I think year 2 he could have. It's hard to see because he got hurt and he's such a young tight end, and then yeah, and so it's like he's a guy I'm still like excited for just because it's like maybe this year is the year with Michael Penix. As everybody says, you're going to draft him 101 in all drafts, whatever. But and like I'm not doubting the fact that he could potentially be a top 10 tight end this year. It just like it'll be interesting to see how his ability to make cuts happens this year. He's now like 2+ years removed from his like injuries that he's had, and it's like if you can't make the cuts still, 3 years later, then it's like, dang, that injury really did cook you. Hopefully that's not the case for me. On my list, at least, obviously we're aligned with Brock Bowers and Trey McBride. Big fans of both of these guys. In a different dynasty league of mine, I tried drafting Brock Bowers. He's taken like a pick before me, so I was pretty upset. Got Colston Loveland though this year in that league, so
nice.
And then for me, I have George Kittle at number 3, and it just comes from the fact that like he's unbelievable as a receiver, at the tight end position, where he put up 1,100 yards receiving, 8 touchdowns in 15 games as well. So he missed 2 games, I guess. And the story of his career is that he is a phenomenal run blocker. And so he's like the tight end package career-wise that you really do want out of any tight end. And that's what has me place him a couple spots ahead of Travis Kelce. Where, yeah, I think from a yardage standpoint, we'll see more or less similar results. Even if he puts up the same amount of yards as last season, I consider that a win for Travis Kelce. I just think, based off film from the Super Bowl, he's pretty watched as a blocker. I think that was kind of the biggest takeaway. Where, like, from a run blocking standpoint, I feel like there was almost highlight reels where, like, people just cruised past him, where, like, it didn't look like he was putting any effort into his blocks. I mean, that could just be because he's tired, which obviously is still a red flag from a football player, but just like him being older and whatnot, and just like him never having blocking as a strong suit has kind of bumped him down to number 5, where I think, at least on this list of these top 4 guys, they are good blockers. I think, just straight up compared to Travis Kelce, but they also, I think, have similar or better upside in terms of receiving that Travis Kelce also does have. And so it's like, I look at the list below and I'm like, TJ Hawkinson, he's a better blocker than Travis Kelce, but I think Kelce is a lot more of a threat in the receiving game still compared to Hawkinson. And that value he adds as a receiver to the Chiefs has me put him higher than TJ Hawkinson on this list, whereas it's like, maybe you could argue he's a better receiver than some of these guys in the top 4, but like not by enough to the point where the blocking comes into play. And I'm like, the blocking here just makes him a better asset overall at the tight end position.
Why do you have Tucker Kraft 7?
Tucker Kraft?
And above Mark Andrews.
Yeah, Tucker Kraft is probably the most consistent, outside of the running back game, the most consistent like offensive weapon piece that the Packers seem to have. Especially just like what he's like year 2 or 3 tight end. He beat up Luke Musgrave, who was drafted like 2 spots or two rounds like ahead of him or something. Last year he puts up like 700 receiving yards, I think, and I'm like, he kind of can ball out. Like he is the package of he's like a good receiving tight end. Plus he does have run blocking capability, and we saw that like he was able to have like good receiving stats throughout the season, posting up 700 receiving yards. Or it feels like in terms of the receiving game, it's like what I envision going into this season is most likely Matthew Golden will be the number 1 target hog for this Packers team. And then it's like honestly a tie between Jaden Reed and Tucker Kraft for like the next spot in terms of just overall impact in that Packers receiving room. Maybe Reed gets more overall yards just simply because he's a wide receiver. But I think Tucker Kraft, just as an impact player, can, have more consistency than we see out of Jaden Reed, which I'm a huge fan of. And then again, he puts up the numbers receiving wise that you want to see from a good tight end. Plus, it's like he can block as well. So he's a complete package style tight end. I think some of his draft pedigree and the fact that he hasn't put up 900 plus receiving yards at the tight end position has a lot of people like not necessarily realizing how good Tucker Kraft may be going into the season. But I think he's an underrated tight end that a lot of people don't quite have on the radars, especially because he was in fact drafted after Luke Musgrave in their rookie year. Didn't start until Musgrave got hurt, but then once Musgrave got back, Tucker Kraft was in fact the starter. And then and so I think there's like a lot of good that we've seen out of Tucker Kraft that I can't really deny necessarily.
I hear you, but I don't know about top 10 though. That's kind of where my head's at, because I'm like, okay, let me see one more season of this. Let's see it. And I look at the ranking above Mark Andrews and Evan Engram, and I'm like, I'd probably take both players over Tucker Kraft at this point in his career. And while it's possible it could prove me wrong, I have Green Bay's offense still going for Jaden Reed at least his first year. And it's a lot of wide receivers twos where I could see the ball just being spread out. I think last season with a lot of injuries. So the roster, it kind of helps Tucker Kraft's ability to shine. And his touchdowns went way up. But I'm very curious to see if that remains consistent. So it's definitely, I'm very curious to see what happens this year before I'm ready to put him like top 10, much less top 7.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I look at Kincaid and I look at Pitts, and I could easily see a scenario where both become the primary options
Mm-hmm.
this year. Maybe less so Pitts, more so Kincaid. But for Pitts, I look at it where it's like, yeah, it has people questioning like whether it can cut right, but I look at it where there could be another explanation for this. Talking about last season when you're trying to start with Kirk Cousins and then move on to Kirk Cousins on one leg, by the way, and then moving on to Michael Penix as a rookie trying to figure things out after having 2 straight seasons of Desmond Ritter, Taylor Heineke, and like whatever the heck that was with Arthur Smith leading the charge. I don't think that was a recipe for success, particularly where you have Jonnu Smith being used in favorable matchups. And I think Kyle Pitts needs some stability around him in order to prove like he was worth the investment. So I am still willing to take a chance on him. Like if I see him going at like round 12 or round 13, I will definitely pick him up. I'll definitely pick him up because at that cost, there's so much of upside with him. And he could potentially be my tight end 2 or like a tight end 1 because there's another guy I was thinking about. Another guy that didn't make my list for me, but I think could easily have as good of a season as Tucker Kraft is Pat Freiermuth out of the Steelers. I don't think he's getting talked about nearly as enough because people are worried about Darnell Washington and Jonnu Smith. And I'm looking at him right now and I'm like, he's the only guy from that position group that could win one-on-one matchups, and particularly with the loss of Pickens and the heavily reliance on DK Metcalf. He's the one guy that's not being talked about in the media that can be that secondary option for Aaron Rodgers. And I think you'll see that season out of him, similar to what you saw out of Robert Tunyon, back in his heyday with the Packers. So that's one guy I would keep an eye out. He just barely missed my list, but I can easily see him have a great season as well.
Yeah, and so to kind of explain my reasonings with Mark Andrews and Evan Ingram. First with Mark Andrews, I just look at like the really slow start he had going into last season, and it's like if you're going to be a top 10 tight end, you really can't have like lull periods throughout the season. Obviously, he finished stronger, which gives me hope for a strong start going into this season. But it was just that kind of overall concern. He is an older tight end, right? Like he's turning 30 in like 10 days or something like that, apparently. I got his Pro Football Reference page up right now. And so he is in fact getting older. And so it's like, and I would like to see that. Like, I mean, obviously, I don't envision him to be the same, tight end that he was back in 21 when he put up 1,300 receiving yards, and then the following season he puts up 800 yards. Like I don't see that necessarily being the case with him. But like, I think it's almost like a bigger strength of his is just like overall ball knowledge, and then his blocking ability to some extent, where it's like, sure, he's decent enough at pass catching now, but like I think he's definitely a player that has lost a couple steps in his game. I mean, he's still a top 10 tight end, so he's still good enough, over a lot of other players. Where again, I look at the Cade Otton versus Mark Andrews situation, right, and I'm like, I think Mark Andrews has maybe a similar 4 weeks of tight end number 1, that Cade Otton had last season. But like on top of that, I think Mark Andrews just plays better throughout the course of a season than Cade Otton does, right? But like, again, it's like that's more of who I'm comparing him to, just because of his slow start and his age, which is funny because Zach Ertz is on this list as well. But I think on the contrary, despite Zach Ertz being like ancient in terms of NFL players, right? Like he year after year kind of just does prove everybody wrong in terms of like, oh, is this the year he's going to fall off? Is this year he's going to fall off? Because it's been a couple years. It's like, oh, he's just kind of like a stopgap tight end. But it's like his time in Arizona, he was literally he balled out pretty well. He's in Washington now, and like he's been a good tight end for Jaden Daniels and for the team as a whole. And that's why he's back again with the team, and they're confident enough having him here. And then Evan Ingram, I think it's a similar case to Travis Kelce, where it's not necessarily like, oh, he's washed, but just like he's more of a receiving tight end. His strength does come in the fact that he is a receiving tight end versus like a complete package tight end. And that's why, like, even though I think he could potentially be like top 5 in terms of overall tight end receiving yards this season, just like his impact in terms of run blocking is quite low. Obviously, that's not why you bring in a guy like Evan Ingram, but it just like as a complete tight end, he's not the best, which is, I mean, he's still number 10, but like that's my ranking for Evan Ingram right there.
Where I disagree a little bit on Ingram is what Sean Payton wants out of the position. Like he's kind of the Joker position, right? So I think he'll be used more than just a receiving option. I think he'll be used in the run game. I think he'll be used all over the field, and that's going to add the value to the team for him. So with that said, why not move him above Mark Andrews at this stage of his career? I just think it's just an experience and like years of consistency we saw out of Mark Andrews over Evan Ingram. But I do think Evan Ingram has untapped upside that the 3 options you have on your list above him don't necessarily, just because we don't know what he's going to add to Sean Payton's offense beyond the consistency he showed in Jacksonville last season. And I think that's something to be excited about.
Yeah. So little like asterisk mark on the whole Joker situation. Whereas I feel like everybody hears the Joker role in the Broncos and they're like, oh, he's going to be all over the place. Literally, by definition, with the Broncos staff, the Joker position is literally a offensive playmaker that is not a wide receiver. That's simply what it is. A player that can be good that isn't a wide receiver is the only definition and only context that's ever been used for the Broncos Joker position. So I don't get what people are going off about. Like, oh, the Joker's going to be all over the field. They're just going to play their position. Like, if they didn't bring in Evan Ingram, odds are like, oh, our Joker is going to be J.K. Dobbins or whatever. And it's like, well, J.K. Dobbins is just going to play run. He's not going to play all over the field. Like, he's just going to be running back. He's just an impact player. Sean Payton has even dissed on people saying Joker. But anyways, you said Evan Ingram could be part of the run game. I'm like, what is he going to add to the run game?
Tight end sweeps, man. They're the best player in Madden. All I'm saying is like he can do it.
But again, that falls under just being a fast tight end. Like, again, it's the same thing as like what I'd imagine Travis Kelce doing, where it's like
I think you have some trauma from Noah Fant that you're not willing to admit over here.
Noah Fant just sucks. He can't break a tackle. Noah Fant was tight end 1 for the Seahawks for like the last 4 years, and like he couldn't.
You were debating him having in your top 10 list.
No, Noah Fant, like he couldn't even like make himself stand out as a fast tight end. There's like, if it's like the receiving tight end tier is probably what, like Travis Kelce first, Evan Ingram is like the next guy on this list. Kyle Pitts is probably next on this list, and then like you have Darren Waller next on this list, followed by Noah Fant is like the next tier of receiving only caliber tight ends.
Darren Waller, top 10 season incoming.
Yeah, I mean, he's still my tight end, ranked 28 on my list, so we'll see how that goes.
Oh, man. Okay, yeah. But interesting discussion. I did not think we were going to get into it with the wide receivers and tight ends. Maybe it makes me more excited to see what happens this season because I can't tell if I'm a year behind on these guys or whether like you're just dead wrong, Corstian. I'm going to roast you for the next time we meet on this, but
yeah, it's okay. I'll just bring up Anthony Richardson again.
Oh man, I knew you were going to bring that up, man. Yeah, I tried to trade for him in like when I was gonna give up my 2nd and my 3rd round pick in Dynasty, and I'm really glad I didn't make that trade because now he's not starting, as we all know. And now I texted the guy, I'm like, you really jinxed him, right? And I'm still willing to trade a 3rd-round pick for him. No
Mhm.
answer. I think he's kind of embarrassed. So
Yeah. Dude, if you can't beat out Daniel Jones for the quarterback spot, you might be cooked.
for a 3rd-round pick, I'll take it. I'm
Mm.
willing to take my chance, man, because all
Yeah.
it takes is a new surrounding cast. And like, look at Baker Mayfield. Look at Jameis. Like
Yeah.
for a
But
little
like,
bit.
but like
Sam
those guys
Darnold.
were good in college and in high school.
We'll see. We'll
Yeah.
see. I'm willing to take the 3rd-round risk with this guy because you
Mhm.
saw the fantasy numbers he put out when he was balling, man. Like those
Yeah.
are top 5 fantasy numbers per week. So
Mhm.
still holding out hope.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
next week, I'm looking forward to covering a week 1 preview. Hopefully Micah gets signed by then, so we don't have to talk about the drama when we meet next week. But
Mhm.
who knows? Might be an Emmitt Smith
Yeah.
situation. So hope you enjoyed our rants and our discussions of the top 10 list. Corstian, anything to say to the public?
Nothing much. Yeah, follow our social media that we don't ever post on. But
Oh
cool.
man, the roast can keep coming.
This is on both of us. Low key. I mean, yeah, whatever. But yeah.
Follow us on YouTube at our Modern Mission podcast here.
Mhm.
And until then, we'll see you guys next week to cover week 1. It's finally here, guys. Really excited about that.
Mhm. Peace.